Okay. All right. So we have finally gotten to the mountain, finally at Mount Sinai, and Israel is about to receive the law. And it cannot be understated how important and monumentous this uh, part of the story is. This is what has been building up uh, pretty much the whole time for the book of Exodus. Um, it should not, however, like they received the law, but the climax is there's a tabernacle and God dwells among his people. So this is super important. This is where God initiates his covenant with the people of Israel. And that's incredibly important. Like he's making them and creating them into a people who will be his people and be his representatives to the rest of the earth and to draw all the other nations back to Yahweh. Because the whole earth and all of its nations and all of its people belong to him by virtue of him being the creator. Right? So he divorced the nations and scattered them abroad at the Tower of Babel. And he has a plan to bring them all back to himself. Because God's goal is to have a human family ruling on earth with him and to have a relationship with humanity. Now, we consistently and persistently rebel against God. And so he's still trying to enact his plan. Part of that plan, if you remember, Genesis 11, Tower of Babel incident. Right after that, call of Abraham, or call of Abram at that point. Right? So God doesn't waste any time. He immediately initiates his plan of redemption and salvation through Abraham's descendants, which ultimately Messiah, Christ, right? And all of those who believe, like Abraham did, will be a part of this new people of God who will be called out, separated from the rest of the world to be priests to the rest of the world. Draw everybody back to God. That's the goal. It starts with Israel. It's right here in Exodus. We're going to be in Exodus 19, and we're gonna summarize it and then touch down in a few spots. Again, I use this textbook called The Torah Story. Highly recommend it. It's by Schnitzer. I think that's how you pronounce his name, and it's really really good. I'm going to be quoting, man, like this little part of this chapter in his book is like worth the price of the book. I'm be quoting him a lot this morning. It's just so good. So, for example, he summarizes the story thus far kind of like this. Quote, the first weeks and months that God spent with the newborn nation are a study in contrast. Yahweh poured out his grace and provision, gave victory on the battlefield, and revealed his will at the mountain. The people were characteristically sinful, like all humans. They rebelled immediately and consistently. At the mountain, God proclaimed his word to the people he had chosen, a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. He established a covenant with them, and the people accepted it. Important point. Moses ascended the mountain to receive a copy of the law from the hand of God. Before he returned, the people would already break the highest commands of the covenant. Verse 2 of the Ten. Should be recognized also, this is another quote from Snitcher, that there's echoes of Genesis, that Exodus and Genesis really are tied together very closely. And I hope that through this study we've been able to see that there are echoes of Genesis in Exodus. And Schnitzer would say that Exodus has the shape, has a Genesis shape to it. But he says, quote, the creation of the nation and the giving of the law itself were each Genesis shaped. God brought the nation through the waters of the sea and led them to the mountain. As he had spoken the world into existence, now he spoke his word to the people of Israel. The creational structure of the revelation at the mountain was in accord with the separation of the creating days. So what he's saying there is when God created everything, it was a chaotic, watery mess. And what does he do? He speaks things into existence and he separates. That's what creation is. It's separate things and order them in a specific way. And he does that through the creating days. This is what he's doing with children of Israel. Right? He's speaking his word to the children of Israel, and that's going to make them a separated people to the rest of the world. And then he quotes another scholar, Brethheim, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Quote, "Law is a means by which the divine ordering of chaos at the cosmic level is actualized in the social sphere." So cosmically, in creation, God separates and orders things. When God speaks his law to his people, that's God ordering the social sphere. This is how we ought to live as human beings. Here's the law. Here's what it looks like. It's this is massive. This is God telling us, this is what I want you to do. This is my, you ever wondered what God's will for your life is? It's right here. He tells us. And he wrote it down on stone tablets and was like, here, this is it. Like, he gave it to Moses, and then Moses came down and it was wild. We haven't gotten there yet. But that's what it looks like. Just starting in chapter 19 and going all the way to roughly 24. Once you get to 24, or once you get to chapter 25, then all the way to like chapter 31 is just specific details on tabernacle and altar and all of the parts and pieces that go along with how to worship God properly. Like, here are all the items you need to build, and here are the specifications for it. And it's just in just detail. Oh, the detail, right? And it takes a long time to read through that. And if you're reading it, you're like, oh my goodness. Remember, this is a story. So if you can picture it in your mind, if you're like watching it like a movie, what happens is God comes down the mountain, right? Moses goes up and talks to him, and people agree to follow this covenant, and it's great. And then, well, here, this is what it looks like. Picture it in your mind as a movie. So Israel gets to Sinai. They get to the mountain. God initiates the covenant with Israel. He fulfilled his prophetic word to Moses at the burning bush. If you remember, Moses goes, how do I know that you're leading me? And he goes, you'll know when you worship me at this mountain. Like, but that hasn't happened yet. It's like, yeah, you got to trust me. I'm going to work things out. We're going to get back here. God fulfilled his word. Like, that's what he does. It's conditional, this covenant. If you obey, then you'll be a special people. If you obey. The people promise to do all that the Lord commands. Verse 8 in chapter 19. God speaks to Moses so that Israel will hear God speaking to Moses and trust Moses forever. That's in verse 9, chapter 19. So God comes down onto the mountain in a thick cloud. It's darkness and lightning and terrifying stuff. And it's like fire on the mountain. Crazy. And it's super loud. God speaks the 10 commandments. Everybody can hear this. He speaks his law to his people. The people are afraid and they move away from the mountain. God tells Moses, since they back away, God tells Moses to tell them, don't make any gods out of silver or gold. That'll become important later. He tells them right up front. Just told them the 10 commandments, which were 1 and 2, right? You'll have no other gods before me. Don't make any idols, silver and gold. Reiterates it right here. Don't make any silver or gold gods. And the emphasis is that worship is important as a covenant community. Then you have what's called the Book of the Covenant, which are these basically case law on how to deal with certain issues as it pertains to the fulfillment of God's 10. So it's like, it kind of fleshes out what murder looks like, what manslaughter looks like, and the penalties for it. So if X, then the judicial penalty Y. There's a lot of that. We'll look at that in a little bit. Then you have a covenant ceremony, and there's sacrifices and offerings. Moses, as the mediator, goes to the people to tell them all the law. So he just received the book of the covenant, and he goes to the people and he reads it to them. And the people all agree to the terms. This is chapter 24, verses 3 and 7. Then Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and the 70 elders see God and eat a meal with him. Yeah, that actually happens. Chapter 24. Kind of wild. Flip over there. 9 through 11. So, the covenant is affirmed in chapter 24. And they sacrifice animals. They have all of these they build the altar. They have 12 pillars that represent the 12 tribes of Israel. They make sacrifices and offerings so that way they can approach God. Moses takes the blood and sprinkles it on all the altar and all the things, making them holy so they can approach. He took the book of the covenant and read it to the audience of the people, and they said, "All that the Lord hath said we will do, and be obedient." That's verse 7. Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people. He said, "Behold, the blood of the covenant, which the Lord hath made with you concerning all these words." Then went up Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel, and they saw the God of Israel. And there was under his feet as were a paved work of sapphire stone, and as it were body of heaven in its furnace. And upon the nobles of the children of Israel he laid not his hand. Also they saw God and did eat. They shared a meal with God. You remember, it would have been, month and a half ago, we talked about the two powers in heaven idea. There's a power in heaven, and then there's God's kind of physical manifestation that's on earth. That's who I think they're eating a meal with. It's same like a lot of times that gets tied in with the angel of the Lord. The angel of the Lord is a physical manifestation. That's who they're eating with. So they share a meal. This is how you ratify a covenant. You have the shedding of blood with animal sacrifices, right? You cut a covenant. You guys remember back to Abraham? When God makes a covenant with Abraham, he cuts the animals in half long ways, fall open like that, and then the two people cutting the covenant are supposed to walk through. And what they're doing is they're saying, "I promise to keep this promise between us, and if I don't, you can treat me like this animal." Then you walk through it together, right? Well, God puts Abraham asleep and then walks through it himself as kind of pot with fire. Physical manifestation at that time. So that's what's happening here. And then you share a meal because you have fellowship with one another. You're both in agreement on the terms of the commitment, and everything is good. It's all there. We're in agreement. We're going to walk together. This is going to be awesome. It's going to be great. And then Moses leaves Aaron in charge. He says, "I'm going to go up onto the mountain to receive the law that God has written with his own hand on stone. I'm going to go get that." And then if you're playing, that plays really nicely, kind of like a movie. You're picturing it in your mind. If you're reading it on the pages, it's almost like everything just comes to a screeching halt because now you get all of this stuff about the tabernacle. And it's just super detailed. And it takes a long time to get through. It's a lot it's from chapter 25 all the way to chapter 31. It's just a lot. So as you're reading it, in narrative time, it takes a long time. When you get to chapter 32, and the people are like, "Moses has been gone a long time." You kind of feel that, right? Because you just read through all these chapters on all this detail. And it's kind of like this big monologue. So if you're picturing a movie, you have these two characters sitting across the table from one another and they're talking, having a dialogue. Well, it's like, imagine that the Lord's sitting on one side and Moses sitting on the other. And he's like, "All right, let me tell you about this tabernacle. I need it to be like this." And he pulls out the blueprints and he's like, "Be like that and this." And if you can imagine two people talking like that, that's kind of like what happens. And then it cuts away from that and it goes down to, boots on the ground with the people down at the bottom of the mountain. They're like, "Whoo, we need a golden god. Hey, Aaron, come on." He's like, "Yeah, sounds like a great idea. Give me your earrings. Let's do this." And then they worship like they did in Egypt after they had promised multiple times that they would follow all the commands of God. Moses has been away 40 days. I don't know if he's coming back. That mountain's on fire. He's in the middle of it. I don't trust it. And Aaron goes, here's the God that brought you out of Egypt. It's like, oh my gosh. So so it's like this, in narrative time, it just like comes to a screeching halt. And then you get back to the people at the bottom of the mountain. And then you go, what are they doing? I can't believe they're doing this. This is crazy. That's the story, right? And it's really cool the way that it's set up. It's awesome. But things that we need to kind of look at and realize. Flip back to chapter 19. This is, really, we'll read the whole chapter, but verses 4 through 6 are kind of the key points where we want to touch down. So, in the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. For they were departed from Rephidim, and were come to the desert of Sinai, and they pitched in the wilderness. And there Israel camped before the mount. And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called out to him of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. I saved you. Salvation. Saw that. Now, therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed, that's Shema. That has the idea of hear it with a willingness to obey. If you will obey my voice indeed, and if you will keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people. For all the earth is mine. Separation there. All the earth is mine, but you're going to be peculiar, special people, separated. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak to the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before their faces all these words which the Lord commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, All that the Lord hath spoken we will. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. Like, okay, we're cutting this covenant. This is what it's going to look like. Do you agree? This is your choice. It's choice time. And all the people say, yes. And the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, Go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes and be ready against the 3rd day. For the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, Take heed to yourselves, that you go not up unto the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever toucheth the mount shall be surely put to death. There shall not a hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through, whether it be a beast or man, and it shall not live. When the trumpet soundeth long, then shall come they shall come up to the mount. So not till then, not until the trumpet sounds. Go near the mountain until the trumpet sounds. And Moses went down from the mount unto the people and sanctified them. They washed their clothes. And he said unto the people, Be ready against the 3rd day. Come not at your wives. And it came to pass on the 3rd day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that were in the camp trembled, terrifying. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire. And the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. That word for quaked, the same word that was translated trembled back in verse 16. Throw that out there. And the Lord came down. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long, and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by a voice. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai, on the top of the mount. And the Lord called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, many of them perish. And let the priests also, which come near to the Lord sanctify themselves, lest the Lord break forth upon them. And Moses said unto the Lord, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for thou chargest us, saying, set bounds around the mountain and sanctify it. He's like, the people aren't going to come up. You already told us to set a boundary around and not to go past it. And the Lord's like, better tell him again. And the Lord said unto him, away, get thee down, and thou shalt come up, thou and Aaron with thee. But let not the priests or the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break forth upon them. And Moses went down to the people and spake unto them. So it's like, God knows better. He knows these people. They're rebellious. I told them not to, go past this boundary. Probably going to do it. You better go tell them again. It's really funny in light of the previous 3 chapters. So, verses 4 through 6. That's like God's coming down the mountain. Like, so epic and awesome. And there's a really good apologetic application to that. But he comes down. So, who is the covenant for? Look at verses 4 through 6 again. You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed, and if you will keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me, above all people. For all the earth is mine. And you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak to the children of Israel. So, who is the covenant for? For Israel. I think it's a little more specific than that. Again, it's conditional. What does it say? If you will obey. So the ones who are the peculiar treasure are the ones who choose to obey. Those are the ones. Those are the people of God. Now, right now, it's the whole nation that's at the mountain, right? The people of Israel. So I know I'm kind of needling down to something very specific, but it'll make sense, I hope, in a second. It's only the ones that believe that are really Israel. The prophets later, when they're referring back to this moment, right, they basically narrow it down to a faithful remnant. You guys remember that in Isaiah and Ezekiel? It's like, eventually Paul will say, not all Israel is Israel. Right? So right now it's like this people group, this ethnic group, right? They're going to be separate. But just because you're an Israelite doesn't mean you believe. They're 2 different things. So it's only the ones, if you will obey. Those are the ones. Those are the kingdom of priests. Those are the ones that are a peculiar treasure to the Lord. So what does a priest do? What does a priest do? Priest preaches to the people, right? So if you notice, as we read through chapter 19, the Lord was very specific. Don't let them break through. Only certain ones can go into the presence of God. Right? Just think about the tabernacle and the temple. Who is the one that could go into the Holy of Holies? Only the high priest. One guy. That was it. It's so dangerous to be in the presence of the Lord that only one person, after a lot of ritual cleansing, can even attempt to enter in. Priests are representatives for the people, and they're the go-between. They're the mediator between the people and the Lord. Right now, that's Moses and Aaron. That's how God has set it up. And eventually, when you read Leviticus, it'll set up the whole priesthood. Aaron is the high priest, and sons Nadab and Abihu after him. Like, all of that is coming. We haven't read that yet, right? I haven't gotten there yet, but that's what's coming. You can't just walk up to God and say, hey, how's it going? No. God will kill you. Don't approach the mountain. Don't go beyond this point. or else the Lord will break out and kill you. If anyone even gets close and touches the mountain, you're to stone that person. Unholiness, trying to enter holiness, not allowed. That's why there's so many sacrifices and rituals associated with just even entering the presence of God. The whole book of Leviticus, why it's there, sets up this whole system. Because the idea is you bring your unholiness you bring your uncleanness, this ritual uncleanness, and you're trying to touch things that are set apart, sanctified, sacred. Profane cannot enter into sacred space. You have to go through a ritual in order just to enter in. That's important. Israel was to be the priests between the nations and God. They were to be a special people, a special treasure. Only if they obey his voice and keep the covenant, right? You shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. A kingdom of priests, a holy nation. That's what Israel was to be. Again, Snitcher, quote, the Sinai covenant then was not designed to isolate Israel from the nations. Right? The idea was not to just make this bubble and put Israel over here and be like, I got my people. All you guys, forget about you. I've got my people and we're just going to go hang out over here. That wasn't God's plan. God's plan wasn't to isolate, but it was to separate them to serve and represent the nations to their God. Does that sound familiar for the church at all? If you will obey my voice, if you choose to keep my covenant, then you'll be this kind of people. There's salvation first, right? I brought you out on eagle's wings. Verse 4, you have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, how I bare you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. Right? That bear you on eagle's wings has the idea of like a mother trying to teach, like a mother bird trying to teach a little chick how to fly. Brought you to this point, and I've taught you how to fly. And I brought you unto myself. That's kind of like a marriage metaphor, like where the husband brings his new wife into the chamber. Brought you to myself. We're going to have this intimate relationship together. So this is the salvation point. After that, there's service and responsibility. You don't do the service in order to get the salvation, right? You don't do works in order to get saved. Works come because you're a different kind of people. You've been saved by the Lord, and now you can go serve. Serving means bringing these nations back to God. That's what that is. That's God's plan the whole time. And ultimately, we are the fulfillment of that. This right here, we are the fulfillment of that. How do I know that? Flip over to 1 Peter. Notice the language that Peter uses. James, 1 Peter. Chapter 2, we're going to read verses 1 through 5 and then 9 through 10. 1 Peter 2, verse 1. Wherefore, laying aside all malice and guile and hypocrisies and envyings and all evil speaking, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that you may grow thereby. If so be you have tasted that the Lord is gracious. To whom coming, as unto a living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God and precious, ye also, as lively stones, are built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God by Jesus Christ. Now he's picturing the people that he's writing to as the stones within the temple. So the church, you, are a temple. Temple of the living God. That's where God's presence is, within the temple. That's where you go worship, and you offer sacrifices, right? Offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God by Jesus Christ. That's who you are. You are a temple. That's what you are as the church. As lively stones built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood. He's like mixing these metaphors right here. And we can do that because of the stone that was disallowed. That's Jesus Christ. And he's about to kind of expand that, right? Where the chief cornerstone is rejected. And that's actually the one that's funny that was rejected, because that's the thing. But we'll skip down to verse 9 and 10. But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood. Does that sound familiar? Right out of Exodus 19. Peter just takes that and goes, that's us. Whoops. That was dumb. He said that's us. Right? So we are the royal priesthood for the world. That's what we are as the church. We're to bring people back to God. Again, go ye into all the world. That's our job. That's our mission. That's our calling. That's what we are to do. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and a holy nation, a peculiar people. Again, just all of these words right out of Exodus. He just pulls it out and applies it to the church. That you should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, which in time past were not a people, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, now have obtained mercy. One last reference point. Let's go to Revelation chapter 5. This again is just so epic, right? The book and the lamb. Like, who's going to open up the scroll? Nobody was found. And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a book written within and on the backside, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof?" And no man in heaven, nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. And I wept much, because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look thereon. And one of the elders saith unto me, Weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the seals thereof, the 7 seals thereof. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne, and of the 4 beasts, in the midst of the elders, stood a man with a sword, powerful and mighty. No, a lamb. A little baby lamb. I mean, not a baby, but a lamb. Now, this is a figurative language. This is, like, he's in a vision. He's seeing these things in heaven, but he sees a lamb that had been slain. So he sees a dead lamb that's still alive. Just picture a sheep with its throat cut, blood coming out. That's what he sees. That's so, there's so much wrapped up in that. How did he conquer? How did he prevail? How is he able to open this book? Because he was crucified. Because he died for his people. So good. So rich. A lamb as it had been slain. And also with the Exodus context of sacrificing a lamb and painting the doorpost, it's all just, John just throws it all into a blender and just gives it to you. Amazing. Having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. That's how Jesus knows everything. He sends these spirits out to report back to him everything that's going on. And he came and took the book out of the right hand of him who sat upon the throne. And when he had taken the book, the 4 beasts and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having every one of them harps and golden vials full of odors, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sung a new song, saying, Thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof. For thou wast slain, and hast redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation, and hast made us unto our God kings and priests. That's right out of Exodus 19. A royal priesthood, kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth. So in this vision, in heaven, the 24 elders and the four beasts. The 24 elders, I interpret that as kind of representing the people of God. We are made this by what Jesus has done. Like, there's so much theology packed into this. The reason we are the kingdom of priests is because of what Jesus has done. And that's what God is calling Israel to be. It's like he knows what Jesus is going to do in the future, and that he's going to save his people by sacrificing himself. God dies on a cross and then is resurrected 3 days later. That's what happens. And you are saved if you believe God, right? Israel was saved because they believed what God told them about how he's going to save them. You have to believe, and that's why John emphasizes believing. That gets, like Christ's sacrifice applies to them as much as it applies to us, looking forward and backwards, right? The blood of Christ is what saves. The blood of bulls and goats doesn't do anything. The blood of Christ that saves. We believe that. Now we're a kingdom of priests, and we're to bring all the nations back to God. So we're to go into all the world and preach the gospel, share it with them. And it's awesome. It's this, we are the fulfillment of Exodus 19. Like, I don't know if that does it for you, but man, it does it for me. Like, that's really cool. We are tied into this story in Exodus. Like, Jesus brings us out of sin and sets us on the right path to follow him, and it's awesome. It's so cool. The law is split into two sections. So you get chapter 20, the 10 Commandments, right? Who knows the 10 Commandments? Oh. I know it. I know. The kids know it. An open book test. All right. Don't murder. Honor your father and mother. Steal. No other gods before me. No idols. Name the Lord in vain. Or false witness. Adultery. Covet. Say again? Not coveting. That's the 10th one. Right. That's the only one that touches on the heart. All the other ones are outward actions. The last command touches on the heart. You know what's really interesting? That's the one that Paul quotes in Romans when he's like, "Oh, I knew I was undone when the law said, 'Thou shalt not covet.'" Ooh, I do that all the time. God, I want it. I had it. So we have these laws, and it's split into two sections. You have the 10 Commandments, and you have the Book of the Covenant. These two bodies of law, this is a quote from Snitcher again, these two bodies of law function together as the legal and social guidelines for the covenant. The two collections of instruction had distinct character but rightly belong side by side. Covenant. So this is God's will for Israel. The first several commands are detailed and focused on the manner in which the people must relate to God. Right? I have no other gods before me, no idols, don't take my name in vain. This is how you relate to God. While the latter ones, all brief, relate to others. The commands may follow the creational design of human beings themselves. The image of God in humanity requires devotion and loyalty to God. And living in society with others who are in the image of God requires respect and love. The 10 words, or the 10 commandments, begin with, "I am Yahweh your God," and it ends with, "your neighbor." Opens with God, closes with your neighbor. What you know about God will tell you everything you need to know on how to behave with other people. So your theology, what you believe about God, becomes incredibly important on how you behave with others. That's why, if you just look at almost any Pauline letter, he always opens up with just all of this theology. Like, this is what's true. This is what is. And then he goes, now here's how you behave. It's right out of the law. That's how he writes. He just writes in the same way that God wrote. law. And he teaches the same way. The Book of the Covenant is case law. Again, this is Snitcher. Quote, case law, like most of the laws of the Book of the Covenant, as well as many of the regulations in the holiness connection, Leviticus 19, and the Torah code, which is Deuteronomy chapters 12 through 26. They present precedent-setting rules that had to be applied by judges according to the circumstances of individual cases. A typical case law might be, if X occurs, then the legal consequence will be Y. That's what the Book of the Covenant is. And that's chapter 20, verse 22, all the way through chapter 23, verse 19. Read that, it's just like, if this, then that. If this, then that. It's set up kind of like this. Starts off with worship and it ends with worship. So it's sandwiched with worship. Again, the focus is God. So, worship, don't have any idols, and how you're supposed to set up altars. Then there's social responsibilities. The next section is about freedom and servitude of Hebrew slaves, humans injuring other humans, various injuries involving animals, and then concerning matters of property. The next section is worship and social responsibility. First, worship. Sorceresses, bestiality, and false sacrifice. The next session, social responsibility, oppression and loans. Next, worship, offerings, firstborn, and holiness. Next, social responsibility, testimony in court, and an enemy's animal, and oppression, what that looks like. Lastly, there's worship, Sabbaths, and the festivals. So it ends with, these are the feasts that you have to, when I find a place to put my name, these are the feasts that you have to travel to Jerusalem and worship me with. That's where it is, beginning and end. So you have the Ten Commandments and you have the Book of the Covenant, and this is God's will for the people of Israel at the mountain. That's what he wants them to do. This is how you are to behave. Then you're going to get the whole book of Leviticus, which is giant. But something to end on. And just read through that. Trying to understand, like, it's definitely a little weird because we don't have the same cultural context. So, like, talking about slaves is like, oh, this is a little weird. I don't have slaves, but definitely within its ancient context, all of it just makes sense. And it was actually a good example of this would be the eye for an eye teaching, right? That was to limit retaliation, not to give you an expectation to get retaliation. Jesus talks about that when he reiterates the law in the Sermon on the Mount, right? People are teaching like, yeah, they knock out your eye, you go get their eye. That wasn't really what the point was. The point was, if you remember, the rape of Dinah. Remember that story? The Shechemites. So, Shechemite comes, takes Dinah, and then was it Levi and can't remember the other one. Can't remember the other son. But they trick the Shechemites. Right? They go, oh, if you're going to marry Dinah, then you have to be circumcised because all of our people are circumcised. We're going to be family. You got to be circumcised. And they're really mad about what this guy did to the sister. And they go, sure, we'll be circumcised, no problem. And after their circumcision, they're all laying in bed because, it's painful. Got to rest and recuperate. And while they're resting and recuperating, they go in and slaughter the whole tribe. They kill everybody. That's a big retaliation. The law limits that. That was pretty common in the ancient world. If you hurt me, I kill you. The law says, no, don't do that. That's not right. It's only an eye for an eye. There's a limit to your retaliation. Limit. Of course, you don't get to talk about how we go down the mountain. Okay. Well, there's an application for apologetics with God coming down the mountain, and I think it's really cool. Talk about it next time. Let's pray and then go over the verse alert just a couple more times. Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for this beautiful day. Thank you for your word, for your law. And I pray that, Lord, we can be a kingdom of priests, or that we can go into the world, we can share the gospel with others and bring people back to you. Lord, thank you for this calling, for this responsibility But Lord, thank you for the privilege of being your people. Lord, that you would send your own Son, die for us, die for our sins, to redeem us to yourself. Lord, it's a grace and a mercy and a privilege that we certainly don't deserve. Lord, we thank you and we praise you, and we want to honor you by going into the world and sharing that message. Father, help us to worship you this morning. Lord, help us to understand your word in a better way, understand who you are. Father, I pray that as we go down to fellowship, share a meal together, Lord, that we may be renewed in our efforts, in our desire to serve you. Thank you so much for your divine grace. In His name. The reference is Matthew 5:16. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works